Greetings all, Dr. Raphael X here with another video. Before anything else, let us begin with the sign of the cross. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, today I'm here with my friend Dr. George Mychaskiw, who's a doctor, MD, right? MD, not just a PhD, but I believe you're MD also. So,
Deal.
called Follow the Science, a very interesting title. And well, before anything else, subscribe, click on the like button, notification button, all that good stuff. I always forget to say that. But yeah, the very interesting book, Follow the Science. I had one of my colleagues at work said, "Oh well, they thought it was kind of like a left-leaning book." They said, "Oh, this must be a good book." I'm like, "No, it's not what you think," because I know the mentality of the person who said that. And well, first of all, thanks for coming on, Dr. Mychaskiw. I don't want to mispronounce your name. So, yeah, this book, Follow the Science, a Catholic Physician's Contemplations on Faith, Medicine, and the Catholic Church, kind of small chapters. He'll explain a little bit how he put all blog posts together. Very interesting, deals with a whole range of bioethical issues. Very important today. Very accessible book, which I appreciate. A layman can read it, even though you deal with some technical terms, but you break it down, which I like. And what stood out to me, amazingly, was that the foreword is written by Bishop Strickland. So if you could tell us how'd you get, I don't know if you know him personally, how'd you get him to write your foreword, and if you could talk a little bit about your book, Follow the Science.
No, thank you. Yeah, Bishop Strickland and I are sort of kindred spirits. I invited him to join the board of directors of our proposed medical school that we're developing. So
Mhm.
Bishop Strickland sits on our board of directors. When I first saw some things that Bishop Strickland was writing and putting out into the public sphere, I thought, well, his views are very consistent with our overall worldview, and his view on what the Catholic Church should be doing as well is very consistent with our worldview. So I went and met him in Tyler. I was based in Louisiana at the time, so not far away. Went and we got along famously, and he agreed to join our board of directors, and that's where he remains as a member of our board. And he was generous enough to provide some introductory material for the book. The book is a series of posts that talks about uh, different highlights in medicine, what's going on in medicine, what's going on in the Catholic Church as relates to biomedical issues. And there's no particular organization. It was written over about a year or so during the Biden administration. And a lot of the topics arose as a result of what was happening in the news uh, that month or that week. So it falls along obviously very broad themes of pre-life issues, including abortion, IVF, surrogacy, things like that. Then another theme of end of life issues, end of life care. Um, Sort of an overriding theme to the whole thing is just the way that science looks at things or should look at things. And then the last issue is, well, what does the Catholic Church do and what should they be doing? And again, frequently um, we differ with sort of the overall official party line of the Catholic Church, if you will. The Catholic Church enjoys a bully pulpit, right? 1.5 billion Catholics worldwide. That all you need to know about the organized Catholic Church is that 46% of Catholics voted for the Biden administration.
That's right.
And we can get into topics of what an administration is faithful to or not faithful to. But if you are a Catholic, and there's a chapter about that says if you're a Catholic, how do you vote for an administration that is at war with life? I mean, I understand it's all administrations have flaws, and everyone has flaws, particularly politicians. But in the election, it's basically a binary choice. It's the Republicans or the Democrats. I mean, the third party, it's an academic concept, but if you vote for a third party candidate, or if you choose not to vote at all, you're essentially voting for whoever wins the general election.
Right.
So you have to make a choice. And it's often the lesser of two evils, but it's very clear also which evil is the greater of the two evils. And it's disappointing that Catholics and the organized church hesitate, either can't see it or won't point it out.
Yeah, if you could expand a little bit on that, because it's interesting that because it's beyond politics now. It does seem that there's a binary definitely system, but now one party seems to, and not perfectly, of course, but one party seems to be much more in line morally than the other party. Like it's definitely it's a moral decision. But how do you explain even like because I'm in the kind of Catholic traditional world, but even them, a lot of the traditional Catholics are very anti-Republican in a sense, and they fall into a perfectionist spirit where they don't believe in the choosing of lesser evils. But I'm like, come on, guys, this is reality. There's not going to be an ideal candidate that's going to, reestablish Catholicism, that's going to, have everything in line with church teaching. So there is that, what you said, the choosing of lesser evils. And you see that kind of in your book where you're kind of pointing you're pointing you're showing how morality and politics are really intertwined. You can't separate the two in a sense.
That's correct. I mean, the problem that I see and the problem with a lot of Catholics or even organized Catholics is that they do not have one evil greater than the other, right? All evils seem to be equal. So evils of not taking care of the poor or not caring for immigrants in the manner that one feels is appropriate is put on the same pedestal as the murder of unborn children, and even the murder of born children, or the starvation and death of the elderly and disabled through quote unquote palliative humane measures. If life is not your primary issue, it has to be the primary issue, right? If life is not the primary issues, then all other issues are unimportant, right? Before you get to be poor, before you get to be an immigrant, before you get to the whole liberation theology, social justice aspect of Catholicism, you have to be alive first, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is first. Everything else is second. So life has to be the preeminent issue that is more important and overrides all other issues. It's not to say that other issues are not important, right? But one has to be the most important. Caring for life must be and is obviously more important than caring for the poor and the immigrant population. Again, that doesn't mean it's not important, but
Right.
it's not important as life. You have to pick one. It's a binary choice. And I think a lot of these people that vote for a murderous agenda of a political administration feels, well, but this other administration is more moral or they care for poor people better. So even though they want to um, exterminate every unborn child with Down syndrome, I'm going to vote for them anyway because they're nicer to poor people. That's just some sort of weird moral equivalence that maybe helps people sleep better at night or consider themselves, as President Biden said, good Catholics. But it's not right. It's incorrect.
Right, right. I like how you point out that, like, kind of in the secular medicine world, there's no distinction between legality and morality. Kind of like, oh, if we can do it, we should. Basically, isn't there the danger there in medicine that the practicality, the pragmatism kind of becomes the moral theory, where you don't see anymore, oh, if this life will kind of, well, who cares? Let's just get to the practicality in it, especially when you're talking about the frozen embryo situation, which I was shocked to read actually, which shows something humane in the sense that even though some people are not paying for their embryos being remaining to be frozen, the clinics a lot of time they just remain, they keep them frozen. Well, I don't know if that's something humane, but basically at least they're not destroying them. If you want to talk a little bit on that, kind of how legality and morality in the medicinal world that's really not distinct, and kind of the solution, I know it's a lot there, but solution with the embryos, because I know within the Catholic world too, I talked about this on another video with someone else, that within Catholic Orthodoxy there's this kind of there's this difference in opinion of what should we do with them. should we allow women to adopt the embryos, or should we just kind of let them be? They have to go back to the original mother. That's the only moral way.
Yeah, that's Catholic idealism, which is not going to work. This is an
Mm,
unsettled issue
interesting. Yeah.
within the church, and the church wrongly, in my view, cannot come up with an answer here. Now, IVF and the whole IVF industry is a good example of science that has outpaced ethics and morality, right? In that view, anything that's legal is automatically okay. So now we have the creation of human beings, and there's a lot of euphemisms that are used, right? Embryos, clumps of
Right.
cells, zygotes, pick any euphemism, but at the end of the day, these are living human beings. So to have embryos created, a couple goes for IVF, they get embryos created, and of course, for every one that's created, five, 10, dozens are created as backups to ensure a better outcome. And these living human beings are then placed in a freezer in cold storage, and they await an uncertain fate. Some clinics sell them as revenue. Some people pay to maintain them in freezers, and we know the longer that happens, the higher their chance of death is. Um, they're maintained in freezers until somebody quits paying the electric bills, until a couple breaks up. And then what do you do with the embryos? The human beings. And again, they're not kittens, they're not chickens, they're humans, and they're not dead. They're alive, albeit frozen. So they exist in a secular limbo. They're not able to enjoy life, and they're not able to enjoy eternity in the afterlife. They are, again, just victims of this basically evil technology. They're children of a lesser God, if you will. And then the Catholic Church cannot come up with a coherent statement about what to do with these people. I
Right.
mean, they were created through an evil mechanism, but it's not through their fault, right? These are innocent victims of technology, very akin to children conceived as a result of rape. The Catholic Church doesn't say those children should be killed. So why cannot the Catholic Church come up with guidelines on this? And again, you have to be pragmatic. If somebody creates 15 children in cold storage, they're not going to go back to the original mother. Uh, what to do? Is the Catholic Church going to advocate that they be kept in cold storage forever? That makes zero sense.
Right.
They're going to die. Sometimes they're quote unquote donated to research, and that has real 1939 vibes about it. I mean, they're not being donated to research. These are human beings that are being given over to experimentation.
Right.
Uh, and some judges, when they've had to adjudicate these cases, right, because these children are created, they're treated as community property. Inevitably, couples sometimes break up, and what to do with these children. And judges have had to look to laws written before the 1850s, when it was still legal to own human beings in the United States, to decide how to adjudicate these things. And it's just a very good example of science that has run amok from ethics, and it's beyond understanding or common knowledge, right? I mean, the politicians respond to popular opinion, say, well, we should have greater access to IVF, even the Republican politicians, without understanding or maybe ignoring the fact that, again, successful IVF therapy requires the creation of multiple human beings. And what happens with those people and their immortal souls?
Right. Right. Yeah, what you mentioned is kind of scary in the sense that there is such a lack of guidance by the current magisterium. Unfortunately, we're basically in darkness with these bioethical issues, and just new issues come up with the whole AI and these other, like artificial augmentations and whole post-humanism kind of in different manifestations and chips like that. It's there's such a lack of guidance, as if there were some type of like secular ecumenism, like kind of like the top in the church. They want to be kind of okay with the secular society, so they don't want to outrage, the world too much, if you will. and just be kind of soft. I don't know what the deal is. Why is there such a lack of guidance? Like I try to do videos with I have friends who are bioethicists. I myself actually I used to work in a university, I won't mention it, Catholic university. I was teaching nurses in bioethics and they didn't renew my I was teaching it for some years and they didn't renew my I was adjuncting, but they didn't want me to teach there anymore. They basically didn't give me a contract because I did have problems with students. They were saying, "Well, you're defending Catholic teaching in an ethics course." I said, "Well, yes, this is a Catholic university, and it's the faith that precisely provides us the parameters of doing ethics, right? In a Catholic university, because I was using obviously we're using arguments of reason, but I would use the Gospel of Life or some other magisterial documents, and and these were actually from the textbook that we had. I would just focus more on what was according to church teaching because it was like an Oxford Press book, which is, how that goes. But basically, why is there such a kind of obviously the prince of the world is the devil, but why from the top in the magisterium there's such this lack of even concern, it seems, for these issues, which are definitely the hot button issues of today.
It baffles me because the basic tenets of the Catholic Church, the deposit of faith, is very simple. It's not obtuse, it's not inaccessible. The principles are very simple. And yet, when the magisterium and the leaders of the church elaborate on this, the papal encyclicals and other papers that come out, they're almost incomprehensible. They're trying to please everybody and play all sides and not offend anyone. And I've never quite understood that. Why is the Catholic Church unwilling to, at an official level, make broad, simple pronouncements of what this is? Nobody forces anybody to be Catholic. Nobody puts a gun to your head and say you must be Catholic, but yet people feel like and we hear the term cafeteria Catholicism, that people can pick and choose what they like in the Catholic Church, and I can understand that at the membership level. I really don't understand that from the clergy and the official positions of the Catholic Church, why we equivocate on things, why we have these moral equivalences about things. The Holy Father has a powerful bully pulpit and it would be very, very easy to make broad, direct pronouncements of what is the principle of the Catholic Church and how we feel about something. And yet we get more pronouncements about climate change and caring for refugees than we do about uh, official government sanctioned murder of the unborn. Um,
Yeah, no.
and Cardinal Supich is a very good example from Chicago. He had the perfect opportunity when he gave the benediction at the Democratic National Convention to speak truth to power. Make no mistake, the Democratic Party is the party of death. Okay. And all you need to know is that when the Born Alive Protection Abortion Survivors Act was put before Congress, which was a legislation that would require medical personnel to treat the survivors of a failed abortion, 210 out of 212 House Democrats voted against that. So they were not willing to protect somebody born alive after an attempted abortion. One abstained and one voted for the act. So 210 voted against it. So here in Chicago, the Cardinal had the perfect opportunity to make a direct statement and speak truth to power. And what was going to happen to him? Is he going to get fired? Uh, that was his opportunity and his obligation. And instead, he made a very milquetoast, general, Unitarian, Universalist speech, hiding his crucifix, by the way, behind his lapel and not mentioning the name of Jesus Christ once. I thought he should resign in disgrace after that. And I am disappointed that the Holy Father didn't relieve him of his accountabilities.
Right. That's funny you mentioned truth to power because a lot of people use that uh, in a distorted way, as if those who believe in moral absolutes, those are the powerful ones. It's like, no, no, the relativists, those are the ones who have become tyrannical and powerful. The relativists are they're the ones who are imposing their view and are attacking those who believe in moral absolutes. So we just have to affirm truth and affirm life. You think the argument now is that we know that life begins because obviously embryology, I mean, you mentioned in your book. I just AI'd it. I just searched AI. It says life begins at conception, fertilization. I mean, it's a no-brainer. So is it now an anti-intellectual argument in the sense that, well, we're just going to defend it on moral grounds. We know it's a killing. And I've actually heard this because I teach morality too. And I've heard students say, let's just kill it. We know it's a killing. We know it's a murder, but nevertheless, it's my decision to do it. I think that's where it comes down to because science just vindicates the Catholic position of, listen, this is a life at conception, it's 46 chromosomes, independent, biological relationship with the mother, right? The mother immune system goes to destroy it, does it recognizes it as a foreign organism. So scientifically, you cannot justify it not being a human, even though some people distinguish human and impersonality, which is absurd. It doesn't make any sense. But do you think that's where it's going, where it's just a recognition of, yeah, this is death?
I think it has to, because that's the only way you can have an honest conversation, right? The euphemisms that everyone uses prevent honest conversation, as you said, and it's very clear. It's not a religious thing, it's not a belief. It's very clear, it's a fact that life begins at conception. That's when a new human life is created with a unique DNA structure. And the Catholic position is that all life from the moment of conception is equally worthy and unqualified and worthy of protection. And they're all equal. That is the Catholic position. Anytime you start to move off of that, you have to decide then, and if you're being honest, you have to decide then who is unworthy of protection. Are you unworthy of protection if you are too young? Are you unworthy of protection if you have a disability? And eventually you start drawing these lines. And I'm accused of always making these comparisons to history, but it's for real, right? Anytime you start drawing lines, those lines eventually end up with Jews and gypsies being unworthy of life, or Lebensworth and Leben, as the Germans would say, life unworthy of life, which was the phrase back in the 1940s. And why am I a student of history? Because history is a good way to predict the future. I like to know what's going to happen next. And sadly, this happens over and over again. So take the example of Ireland, which the book talks about. Ireland, or I'm sorry, Iceland has no Down syndrome in the country. Only 2 children are born a year in Iceland with Down syndrome. Um, and is it because of the Nordic air, the water, the glaciers, the volcanic activity? No, it's simply because Iceland universally prenatally screens women who are pregnant for Down syndrome in their children and exterminates every child with Down syndrome. The only people born are people that have slipped through the cracks somehow. So it's not that Iceland has cured Down syndrome. Iceland simply exterminates people with Down syndrome. And other countries are not far behind. And hence, it's incomprehensible to me that in the country of Ireland, the formerly Catholic country of Ireland, Down Syndrome Ireland, which is an advocacy group for people with Down syndrome in Ireland, could not make a firm statement opposing abortion legislation. And as I said, I suspect in the future, Down Syndrome Ireland will not need a very big office. If Ireland follows every other European society and indeed Western society, it simply aborts disabled children. Uh, and again, the euphemisms come in. Well, who would want to live that way? It's not a good life, life unworthy of life. We see this end of life arguments as well. So yeah, it's impossible to draw lines, or I don't want to be in the position of drawing lines of who's worthy and who's not worthy. The Catholic position is also the simplest and most moral position that all life is worthy from the moment of conception until the moment of natural death. Anything else is fraught for error.
Yeah, no, that's well said. So it's if we start drawing lines, you're going to see kind of like the proliferation of the powerful. So it's really those who are in power will impose their truth, and then we fall into like a Nazi Germany uh, type of scenario where there's blatant immorality, but basically it's the powerful who are establishing it. So, but what do you think is the most? I know they're all interconnected, but because your book deals with a lot of issues, and again, buy the book. It's a very good read. A lot of the books I get, I don't finish them. I didn't finish this book. I read almost to half, maybe a little less than half. But usually when I'm done with the interview, I put the book down and because I'm going to the next interview. But this book, I want to continue reading after this interview because it is very informative. Again, on layman's term, and is my field too because I teach morality and it helps me out with the arguments that I need to defend the Catholic position. But what do you think is the most, again, these issues are very interrelated, but what is the most pressing issue you think? How do we solve it in a practical sense? Which issue do you think should be dealt with first? How do we go about kind of changing the culture or the
The,
socio-political
needs,
realm?
yeah, the culture needs leadership. I mean, the Catholic Church was once the most powerful organization in the world. And today, the Catholic Church has the courage of a house cat hiding under a sofa. I mean, people look to our leaders for guidance. Another chapter in the book talked about the convention in Boston, right? And the book has a little fun with the reader. It said, well, there was recently a Durka convention in Dearborn, Michigan, making fun of the Prophet Muhammad and Islam.
Mm.
And the lead imam of the congregation said, well, we should just pray and not really make a scene. And of course, the book says, well, of course, dear readers, you know, I'm kidding you. That would never happen. But in Boston, the most Catholic city in the United States, the Satanic Temple had a convention at the Boston Marriott, the Back Bay Marriott, their national convention. And the Catholic Bishop of Boston said, well, we should just pray and not make a scene. And my position was, have we lost our minds? I mean, why didn't the Catholic Church, the Bishop of Boston, say no? This is wrong. We protest. We object. Anybody who's Catholic should not patronize the Marriott Hotel. Anybody working there should not go to work that day. I mean, why weren't the priests and bishops leading civil disobedience in the streets outside of the Satanic Temple's convention? We always acquiesce to this humble position of, well, let's not make a scene, let's just pray over it. And in the meantime, um, things like this go on, and it's obvious that people don't make fun of Islam like
Right.
this. Other religions, we have a lot of butt Catholics in the world, and those you've met butt Catholics. Those are people that start a conversation saying, "Well, I'm Catholic, but I think it's okay for a woman to have the right to choose."
Right.
Right? You don't meet a lot of but Muslims in the world. They pretty much agree on their fundamental tenets. And yet, we, in a very hierarchical and structured religion with a definite leadership structure, as opposed to in Islam, which doesn't have that same sort of structure, we can't agree on anything. We want to be all things to all people. And as I say in the book somewhere, I'm sure there's a Unitarian Universalist congregation that could go and welcome you and your beliefs and whatever makes you feel good, just do it. The Catholic Church has fundamental principles that expect people abide by, and I hope the church would elaborate that and be an example, a leadership to uh, its membership, a shepherd to the flock, if you will. The shepherd doesn't give the sheep the choice of what they want to do, right? The shepherd cares for the flock and guides it. And that's what the church hierarchy should be doing, but often doesn't.
One of the things I hear a lot, and even in some documents, not of high magisterial authority, but some documents from the higher ups, and you hear this around in Catholic circles that really there's almost a separation of concrete acts and then principles. They say, oh, these are abstract principles, but we have to see the concrete acts in their entirety. The principles that they're abstract, they're objective, okay, but it's not just about the object. You have to look at, this is what they say, So they try to divorce these concrete acts, make them kind of isolated from any principles at all. And this is totally wrong. It's like, no, no, no. You cannot, the concrete act can only be by exception. There could be lack of culpability, but the act is always evil. And the person who does it, there's some type of there's a distortion in their will. There's some type of evil that exists, except by exception through invincible ignorance or whatever. But there seems to be that divorce, and I think it's to kind of appease the social conscience and the conscience of each individual. You see this a lot. It's like, oh, objectively it's bad, but subjectively, it depends on. And so when I was reading that chapter on the patient physician relationship, that kind of came to me also, where this is something sacred. No, this is something that this patient physician relation is something that you have to see. Let them talk to the physician. Let them decide on their own concrete terms, apart from any abstract moral principles.
Yeah, the book, as much as possible, tries to be very clear and very um, detailed with supportive evidence about um, right, wrong, and morality. As I say, saying because God said so is probably not a great moral argument. I mean, it can be a religious argument, but morality should stand on its own. I mean, I always am amused when people say, well, the Catholic truth. Well, truth is truth and
Right.
lies is lies. So there's not a Catholic truth, right? There's truth and there's lies. And maybe sometimes people frame it as Catholic truth because this is what the Catholic Church teaches, but it is nevertheless a universal truth. So anything that's right and moral and ethical should stand on its own without the need for a religious because God said so framework. But that being said, we are a religious people and we live in religious communities, at least the majority of people around the world. And we have leadership that should be helping um, guide us on our moral journey and often doesn't.
No, that's exactly right. Um, it happens to me a lot of objections from students that I have. They will say, "Oh, that's no, I don't believe in abortion. I'm not Catholic. You don't have to impose your Catholic view on me." But no, abortion's wrong because it's wrong. It's not because just based on the argument of authority, right? You can show that it's wrong, actually, just based on reason, and it's pretty simple too. So yeah, spot on. So yeah.
In life and should be protected regardless of one's religious beliefs.
Yeah, I mean, it, what's interesting is that Catholicism is the only, well, Catholicism is really the only religion, if we're going to talk straight, because the other religions are kind of man-made, more or less they come closer to the truth. But really, Catholicism, because it's the fullness of the truth, it defends human reason and it defends the natural life of man. And it's the only religion that really does. I mean, all the Christian denominations, basically, when contraception first came out, and I'm sure you know this better than I do, all the Christian dominations, including the Orthodox, were against it. Now it's really the Orthodox. I think they're kind of iffy. The Orthodox are very much in saying certain things and allowing in the concrete practices others, from what I hear. But basically, it's basically only the Catholic Church that has maintained um, that morality. So it was the Catholics who were defending morality and defending reason, defending nature, defending life,
Yeah, a
even though
lot of
it's something we should do
don't
by
realize
reason.
that that's why we were and we are working on Catholic Healthcare International, and this was written in the midst of doing this. We are working on creating a medical school that is life affirming, that teaches life from conception to natural death. I mean, a lot of medical students are not taught that in many instances, oral contraceptives are abortifacients. They're
Right.
not preventing ovulation many times, they're preventing implantation of a human embryo, and the embryo then it dies. So these are drugs that often kill people. Similarly to intrauterine devices, they do not prevent ovulation. They prevent the successful implantation of a living human being. Um, and physicians aren't taught that way. right? Just like physicians sort of take for granted the idea that people would want to abort a pregnancy with a disabled child with trisomy 21, Down syndrome, or trisomy 18. And when we were with our third child, my wife was just a little bit older, and the obstetrician said, "Well, we can get a amniocentesis scheduled," and we were like, "Well, why?" So, well, for prenatal testing, like, why would we do that? And he just kind of looked at us. So we were not going to do anything regardless of what your results are. So why would we do an unnecessary test? And it was like there was a light come on in his eyes because he never even considered it that way. It was simply taught and ingrained
Right.
that at this stage of your life and pregnant, you get an amniocentesis. The whole idea of affirming life and caring for a child, even if such child is disabled, never even entered their mind. It was like explaining oxygen to somebody that grew up on the moon. Um, so students have to understand and be taught these things. And if they want to make different decisions about it, well, that's a whole different discussion, right? But you have to present the objective evidence. And most people, when presented with the objective evidence, draw correct conclusion.
Right, right. It seems that the medical field, and then I'll give you the last word. It seems like the medical field has gotten away a little bit from the Hippocratic Oath and kind of the ethical realm. Because I've noticed that when I taught bioethics, and again to nurses in a Catholic institution, the book that I was given, and I had to use this book, it was it was basically just a history of ethical theories without any substance. Like, this is where truth is. There's no belief in truth at all. And therefore, if there's no belief in truth in the moral realm, you just kind of discard the moral realm. Then I guess we're going back, it goes back to pragmatism. What is the most pragmatic? So when they hear something ethical, it's like, oh, well, basically, it seems like it's been totally discarded. But yeah, I just wanted to leave you with that. And also, if you wanted to talk about, you kind of mentioned already, any other future projects or future works you might be working on, because I know you're a busy guy. And
Still busy practicing clinical anesthesiologist every day.
yeah.
But I work with the group Catholic Healthcare International, and in the charism of St. Padre Pio, they are creating the St. Padre Pio Institute for the Relief of Suffering. And part of that will include the medical school, which will be a faithful Catholic medical school, life affirming from conception to natural death, but also a home for the brain injured, a home and a medical destination for people that are children of lesser gods, people that the healthcare system doesn't see as important. We recently commemorated the 20th anniversary of Terry Schiavo's passing through murder by having her nutrition and hydration withheld. The medical establishment has convinced itself that it is humane to withhold feeding and water from a patient to hasten their death if they're being kept alive by artificial means. They believe that putting simple water down a nasogastric tube into the stomach is extraordinary. And it's not. And the church is very clear on that as well. That's not a heart lung machine. It's not artificial therapy. It's simply providing water and food. And there's a thought experiment in the book said, if this is really humane, if this is true, what the medical establishment believes, then in states where it's legal, why don't we do capital punishment that way? Right? Just cut off water and food until the condemned person dies. If it's humane, we should be okay with that.
Mm.
But it's very clear, right? It's laughable. We know that's cruel and unusual, but yet it's okay for people that cannot protect themselves, that are in a comatose state.
Right.
So we are working to create this institution that will help take back the culture. I like to say that the death of 65 million unborn children since 1973 through abortion, uh, euthanasia by starvation and dehydration, the culture of death in which we find ourselves could not have been accomplished without the ready, willing, and able cooperation of physicians. And it is our charge to take that culture back and have the practice of medicine be a joyful, life-affirming endeavor. Anybody can kill somebody. You don't have to be a physician or special to do that. We should be in medicine joyfully caring, relieving the sick and suffering, and having everyone have their lives fulfilled under the glory of Christ. And we're working on that. It's big. It's a difficult task. I've created 4 medical schools in the United States that are secular schools. It's very highly regulated. It's very expensive, $120 million project. And the people we've spoken with, everyone thinks it's a great idea. It's much more needed in the culture. It's very important. Oh, this is great. When can you guys do this? But we also live in a real world, and $120 million is a lot of money. So keep us in your prayers, keep
Yeah.
saying your rosaries. That's the most important thing you can do. We know that the right people are out there that can help bring this to fruition. We just haven't met them yet.
Right, right, right. Well, hopefully the word gets out, and beautiful way to kind of end it, all for the glory of our Lord and salvation of souls. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I don't know if you did you want to say the last word or good.
No, again, I'm honored, pleased to be here. Pick up a copy of the book. I
Yes.
hope it's entertaining, sometimes a little bit funny and even a little sarcastic in places. Maybe it gets too political for people. There's one chapter that says if you don't like political chapters, go to the next one. But for those of you that are okay, buckle up, Buttercup, because there's some things that get really political. But that's the world we live in. Uh, we have to make these choices.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, the link down below in the description. And yeah, until next time, let me know of any future projects, future books. We can have you on again. And thank you very much. And take care. God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless.